The chamber of the Galactic Council was vast, carved from shining metal and crystal. It stretched higher than a mountain, with glowing pillars that reached into darkness. Every corner of the hall hummed with strange energy, and the air itself felt heavy, as if the weight of the galaxy pressed down inside. Hundreds of alien leaders sat on their thrones, their eyes glowing in many colors. Some had wings folded behind them. Others had scaled skin, or long insect legs that clicked against the floor. They had gathered from across thousands of worlds, representing empires older than human history itself. And yet, despite their power, despite their pride, the entire hall was silent. At the very center stood a single figure. A man. The last human survivor. His body shook as he tried to stand tall. His clothes were torn, burned, and stained. Scars ran across his arms and face, proof of wounds that should have killed him long ago. His eyes were dark, sunken, yet filled with something none of the aliens understood, something that made even the bravest of them uneasy. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had ruled without challenge. Species bent to their will. Empires obeyed their commands. But now, before them stood a survivor of Earth, a man who had seen wars that no alien mind could imagine. He was weak in body, but strong in spirit. And when he raised his head, the silence deepened. Every alien eye locked on him. The survivor opened his mouth. His lips trembled. His voice cracked like dry stone. "You want the truth about Earth," he whispered. "You want to know why I shake? Why I tremble when I stand before you?" No one moved. No one spoke. Even the giant reptilian warlords sat frozen, their scales rippling with unease. The man lowered his head for a moment. His shoulders quivered. For a heartbeat, he looked as if he might collapse. The aliens thought they saw weakness. They thought the human would beg for mercy. But then, he raised his face again. And his eyes burned. "This is not weakness," he said, his voice breaking, yet louder than before. "This is memory. I tremble because I carry the weight of every war, every death, every fire my people have endured. I am not afraid of you. I am afraid of what I remember." A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. Whispers in strange languages filled the air. The survivor's voice, however, cut through all of them. "I have seen cities turned to ash. I have seen skies burn until the sun itself disappeared. I have seen men crawl through fields of fire, not to live, but to fight one more time. Do you understand what that means?" The words hit like weapons. Even the most powerful council members shifted uneasily in their thrones. The survivor's hands shook harder, but still he stood. "You rule thousands of worlds," he said, his voice rising. "You sit here in your shining hall, believing you are eternal. But you do not understand Earth. You do not understand what it means to be human." The chamber grew colder. The man's breath was heavy, ragged, but his words struck with the force of thunder. "Humans, we were born in struggle. We grew in conflict. We learned not in peace, but in war. Every empire that tried to break us failed. Every enemy that tried to erase us bled for the attempt." One of the alien leaders, tall and armored in glowing metal, leaned forward. His voice was sharp, like steel scraping stone. "You shake before us, human. You look broken. And yet you speak of power." The survivor turned his gaze toward the creature. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but burning with fire. "Yes," he said. "I shake because I have lived what you cannot imagine. My body trembles, but my spirit does not. Do you want to know why I stand here, alive, when billions of my kind lie in graves? It is because humans do not surrender. We never stop. Even when we fall, even when we burn, we rise again." The hall grew darker, as if the lights themselves bent to his words. The survivor took a deep breath. His voice dropped to a whisper, yet carried to every corner of the chamber. "You wanted the truth about Earth. The truth is war. The truth is fire. The truth is survival at any cost. And now you know why I tremble." The chamber fell silent once more. The alien leaders, who had believed themselves untouchable, sat frozen in their thrones. Some looked shaken. Some looked afraid. The last human survivor, weak and trembling, had given them not just words but a warning. And in that silence, the galaxy realized something terrifying. They had demanded the truth about Earth. And now, they wished they had not asked. The human stood alone in the center of the chamber. His body looked fragile, as if the smallest wind could break him. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, and his arms trembled as though he carried a weight too heavy to bear. To the alien leaders, he looked broken. But there was something in his eyes that unsettled them. A shadow. A memory. A fire that refused to die. The silence stretched on. Finally, the man spoke again. His voice was weak, cracked, but it carried through the massive hall. "You see me shaking," he said. "You think I am weak. But I do not tremble because of you. I tremble because of what I carry inside. I am a man filled with ghosts." The chamber darkened. Even the air seemed to grow heavier. The alien leaders leaned forward, drawn in despite themselves. "I was not born to be a soldier," the survivor continued. "I was not born to carry the weight of my people. But war does not ask what we want. War chooses. And when it chooses you, you never leave it behind." His voice broke. For a moment, he closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind, images no one else in that chamber could see. A burning city. Screams in the night. The sound of thunder that was not thunder, but bombs falling from the sky. He opened his eyes again. "I have seen children grow old in days, not years. I have seen mothers bury sons, then carry weapons in their hands because no one else was left to fight. I have seen fathers vanish into the smoke of battlefields, leaving nothing behind but ashes." Gasps echoed across the chamber. The aliens, who had fought their own wars long ago, had never heard words so raw. The survivor's hands clenched into fists. His arms shook harder, but still he did not fall. "You sit here in your thrones," he said, his voice gaining strength. "You have forgotten pain. You have forgotten hunger. You have forgotten fear. But I have lived it. Every step I take, I hear the cries of my people. Every breath I breathe, I taste the fire of my world." One alien, its skin like molten stone, leaned forward. Its voice rumbled like thunder. "Why do you tell us this, human? Do you want pity?" The man turned his gaze toward the creature. His lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. "Pity," he whispered. "No. I do not need your pity. I am not here to ask for mercy. I am here to make you understand." The chamber grew colder. The survivor's voice hardened. "You believe I am broken. You believe I am the last of my kind. But hear me, and know this truth: a broken man can still carry the fire of his people. I am one, but within me are millions. Their voices echo through me. Their strength flows in my veins. When I tremble, it is not weakness, it is the weight of humanity itself." The words struck the council like blades. Several alien leaders shifted in their seats. Others looked away, their expressions unreadable. The human took a slow breath. His voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Do you know what it means to fight with nothing left? Do you know what it means to stand on a battlefield where your world is burning behind you, and still raise your weapon because surrender is worse than death?" No one answered. He nodded slowly. "That is what it means to be human. That is what I am. That is why I stand before you now, though everything I loved has been turned to dust." His voice cracked again. For a moment, it seemed as if he would collapse under the weight of his memories. But then his trembling hand rose, pointing toward the alien council. "You look at me and see a broken man," he said. "But know this truth: I am not the weakest of humanity. I am not the strongest either. I am only one of billions who lived through fire, and still walked forward. If one man can stand here before you, shaking but unbroken, imagine what my people were when we stood together." A wave of unease rippled through the chamber. The survivor lowered his hand. His shoulders slumped, his body heavy with exhaustion. Yet his words continued to cut like iron. "You asked for the truth of Earth. I will give it to you. But you must listen, and you must not turn away. Because the truth is darker than you think. The truth will make even you afraid." The chamber froze. Every alien eye remained locked on the trembling man. For the first time in centuries, the mighty rulers of the galaxy leaned forward not with arrogance, but with fear of what they were about to hear. The last human survivor had begun his story. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The chamber was still, every alien leaning forward. The survivor's trembling hands pressed against the stone floor, but his voice carried like a storm. "You ask about Earth's wars," he said. "Then listen. You must hear the beginning, the first war." A shiver moved through the hall. Some alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared interrupt. The man lowered his head, as if ashamed of what he was about to reveal. "Long before we reached the stars, before we even dreamed of other worlds, we fought each other. My people, humans, were born together on one world, one home. And yet, we turned it into a battlefield." He paused, his breath shaking. His eyes looked distant, as though he saw something far away, something that no one else could see. "We fought with sticks and stones first. Then with swords and fire. Kingdom against kingdom. Tribe against tribe. We fought for land. We fought for power. We fought for reasons so small, you would laugh. But there was nothing funny in it. Every battle filled the ground with the dead. Every war stained the earth red." Gasps whispered across the chamber. Some alien leaders shifted in their thrones. They had expected tales of space battles, of fleets clashing in orbit. Instead, they were being told about endless bloodshed from the beginning of humanity's history. The man's voice grew harder. "You think it's strange, don't you? That one world could fight itself again and again. But that was our nature. Conflict was in our blood. We did not wait for enemies among the stars. We made enemies out of ourselves." His words fell heavy, like stones dropped into water. "I lived to see stories passed down, of armies that stretched for miles. Of horses carrying men into battle. Of arrows darkening the skies. Of iron blades cutting down thousands in a single day. Do you understand? We did not fight one war. We fought thousands. And each time, when the ashes cooled, when the dead were buried, humanity rose again. We always rose again." The survivor's shoulders shook. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I remember my grandfather's words. He told me of the world wars. Wars so large, the entire planet was pulled into them. Nations fought on land, on sea, and in the skies. The world burned. Cities fell in hours. Millions died in weeks. Do you hear me? Millions." An insectoid alien clicked its mandibles nervously. Its glowing eyes widened, unable to comprehend such numbers. To them, wars of that scale were unthinkable. The human's lips trembled. And yet, it was not enough. Humanity built weapons greater than ever before. Machines that could crush a city beneath their tracks. Bombs that could erase entire towns in fire. And still, we fought. We fought until the air itself turned to poison, until the seas ran black, until the skies were filled with smoke. He looked up at the council, his eyes burning. "Do you understand now? The first war was not against aliens. It was against ourselves. Humanity's greatest enemy was always humanity. And that is why you should fear us. Because if we can survive our own destruction, if we can live through wars we wage on ourselves, then nothing in this galaxy can break us." The chamber was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of his words pressed down on every soul. The man's body shook harder. His fists clenched at his sides. "I still hear their voices," he whispered. "The soldiers who screamed as fire consumed them. The children who cried as their homes burned. The silence of the dead when morning came. These are not just memories. They are scars written into me. Into all of us. Into humanity itself." One alien, its body covered in crystalline plates, broke the silence. Its voice was sharp, filled with disbelief. "You fought yourselves with such fury, and yet you still live. How?" The survivor lifted his head. His eyes, though wet with tears, glowed with something terrifying, pride. "Because we never stopped. That is the answer. We killed, we burned, we destroyed, and still, we rebuilt. We learned. We grew. We adapted. You call me broken, but I am the proof of my people. We can endure anything. Even ourselves. The aliens sat frozen, their pride shattered. For the first time, they saw humanity not as fragile newcomers, but as survivors of endless destruction. The survivor's trembling voice rose one last time. The first war of Earth was not the last. It was only the beginning. What came after was worse. He lowered his head, shaking, as if the memories weighed too heavy. The chamber remained silent. No alien dared to breathe too loudly. And in that silence, every leader of the galaxy realized a truth more terrifying than war itself. If humans had survived each other, then no empire, no council, no galaxy could ever truly break them. The survivor stood in silence for a long moment. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his hands still trembling at his sides. The council watched him closely. Some expected him to collapse. Others waited for him to beg for mercy. But instead, he lifted his head once more. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "You have heard of our wars," he said. "But you do not yet understand what we became because of them. You do not yet understand the machines we built, the tools of death we gave to ourselves." A low murmur spread through the alien chamber. The survivor's words already carried the weight of fear. He took a slow step forward. His voice deepened. "We were not content with swords and arrows. We were not content with small battles. No, humanity wanted power. We wanted fire we could hold in our hands. And so, we built machines of war." The chamber grew darker, the shadows stretching long. "I have seen them," he whispered. "I have ridden in them. Giant beasts of steel, rolling across the earth on iron tracks. We called them tanks. Their bodies were thick as mountains. Their guns could tear holes through buildings. When they moved, the ground itself shook." Gasps filled the hall. Some alien leaders leaned back in their seats, disturbed by the image. The survivors' eyes narrowed. And that was only the beginning. We gave ourselves wings of fire. Metal birds that screamed across the sky, faster than sound. They dropped death from above, bombs that could level cities in seconds. The sky was no longer a place of peace. It became another battlefield. The aliens shifted nervously. Their kind had starships, yes, but the humans' words painted a picture not of exploration, but of endless destruction. The survivor's voice grew stronger, each word cutting like a blade. "We even built ships for the sea. Cities of steel that floated across the oceans. They carried weapons that could strike targets thousands of miles away. Our oceans, our skies, our very land, they all became places of war. There was nowhere to hide." He paused, his body shaking harder now. His eyes burned with memory. And then, the fire grew greater. "We split the very atom. We built bombs of sunfire. One explosion could turn a city into nothing but shadows burned into walls. One weapon could kill more than 100,000 in a single breath. We gave this power to ourselves. We used it. Twice." The chamber froze. Even the most powerful alien empires had never imagined such a thing. A weapon that could mimic the sun itself, unleashed by fragile creatures from a small blue planet. The survivor lowered his head. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I have seen the photographs. A city turned to dust. A sky filled with fire. People burned alive where they stood. Children walking like ghosts, their skin melted from their bones. Do you understand now? Humanity did this to itself. Not to aliens. Not to invaders. To itself." A sharp gasp echoed through the chamber. Some alien leaders covered their eyes. Others turned their heads away, unable to look at the trembling man who spoke of such horrors. But the survivor raised his voice again, forcing them to listen. "And yet, we survived. That is the part you do not understand. We built weapons strong enough to destroy our world, and still, humanity lived. We crawled out of the fire. We rebuilt our cities. We rebuilt ourselves. Every war made us stronger, harder, more dangerous." His fists clenched at his sides. His body trembled, but his words were filled with iron. "These machines were not built because we hated life. They were built because we refused to lose. When one enemy rose, we created new ways to fight. When death came for us, we built machines that could kill death itself. That is who we are. That is humanity. The chamber was silent again. The aliens sat frozen, their glowing eyes wide with fear and disbelief. The survivor took another shaky breath. His voice cracked, but carried across the hall. You sit here in judgment, thinking yourselves gods. But you do not know what it means to fight as we fought. You do not know what it means to build weapons not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival. When humans fight, we fight until the ground itself is gone. We fight until nothing remains but ash and bones. His trembling hand lifted, pointing toward the alien leaders. You fear me because I shake. But know this, these hands have touched the machines of war. These eyes have seen the fire of the atom. These ears have heard the thunder of tanks, the scream of jets, the roar of bombs that turned night into day. Do not mistake my trembling for weakness. It is memory. It is weight. It is warning. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. For the first time, the rulers of the galaxy looked at the human not as prey, not as a broken survivor, but as a nightmare in flesh. And the survivor, weak but unyielding, whispered his final words for that night. The machines of war were only tools. The real weapon was always us. The survivor stood with his head bowed, his chest heaving as if the weight of his memories was crushing him. His words about humanity's machines still echoed across the chamber. The alien leaders sat frozen, their glowing eyes reflecting both horror and fascination. But the man was not finished. His trembling voice rose again, sharp and cutting through the silence. You have heard of our weapons, he said. But weapons mean nothing without war. Do you want to know the truth of Earth? Then listen. Listen to the endless battles that shaped us. A ripple of unease spread through the council hall. Some alien leaders shifted nervously in their seats, their scaled hands tightening on the arms of their thrones. The human lifted his eyes, his voice shaking yet filled with fire. We did not build tanks and jets for peace. We built them because we needed them. Because our wars never stopped. One ended, another began. Nations destroyed each other, then rose again to fight once more. We killed millions. Then we killed millions more. The chamber darkened as his words hung heavy in the air. I remember the stories of my ancestors, the man said, his eyes distant. Soldiers fighting in frozen fields, starving in trenches filled with mud and rats. Thousands dying every day, and still the battle lines did not move. Men drowned in filth before they ever saw the enemy. Do you understand what that means? War itself became the prison. Several aliens gasped, their expressions filled with disbelief. The idea of soldiers dying in such numbers, trapped in endless struggle, was something they had never imagined. But the survivor's voice grew harder. And then came the skies. Fire falling from above, day and night. Cities turned into rubble in hours. Mothers and children buried beneath stone and ash, while soldiers marched on without rest. Humanity learned to live in ruins. Humanity learned to fight in fire. His body shook, his fists clenched, his voice breaking. We fought in jungles where the air itself poisoned us. We fought in deserts where the sun burned our flesh. We fought in oceans, under the water, in mountains, in the air. There was no place on Earth untouched by war. No place safe. Even home became the battlefield. The chamber grew colder. Even the most powerful alien warlords now sat silent, their arrogance fading. The human took a deep, ragged breath. His eyes burned with memory. I have walked through cities turned to ash, he whispered. I have seen walls painted with shadows of people burned alive. I have heard the silence of millions gone in an instant. These are not stories. These are scars carved into my soul. Every human carries them, even if they have never seen the battlefield. His voice rose again, trembling but unbreakable. We fought wars so long, children grew up knowing nothing but blood and fire. Some never saw peace in their entire lives. Imagine that generations born only to fight, only to die, never knowing a world without war. A crystalline alien shifted uncomfortably, its voice sharp, almost trembling. How could your kind survive such madness? The survivor turned his gaze on the creature. His face was pale, his body shaking, but his eyes burned with terrifying pride. Because we refused to die, he said. That is the answer. We fought when we were starving. We fought when our cities were rubble. We fought when the skies themselves were fire. And even when our world bled, humanity rose again. Always again. The hall was silent, the weight of his words pressing down on every leader. The man's voice softened, but it carried a sharper edge. You sit here in your shining chamber, proud of your peace. But peace is fragile. We know this, because we lost it again and again. We know that peace is only a shadow between wars. And so, we were ready when war returned. We were always ready. His trembling hand rose, pointing at the alien council. Do not mistake us for weak. Do not mistake us for fragile. Our history is not peace. Our history is not harmony. Our history is war without end. And every battle made us stronger. Every scar made us harder. Every death gave us a reason to fight again. He lowered his hand, his body shaking violently now, as if the memories were tearing him apart. You asked for the truth of Earth, he whispered. The truth is endless war. The truth is that we learned to live in destruction. The truth is that even when the world itself falls, humanity does not. We endure. We adapt. We rise. The silence that followed was unbearable. The alien leaders, who had thought themselves gods among the stars, now sat in silence before a trembling man who carried the ghosts of countless wars. And as the last human survivor bowed his head, the galaxy understood something it had never dared to believe. If humanity could survive endless battles against itself, then what chance did the galaxy have if war with humans ever came? The survivor stood shaking, his voice raw from speaking of endless battles. The chamber was silent, the alien leaders frozen, their glowing eyes locked on him. They had heard of humanity's ancient wars, of machines that turned cities into dust. They had heard of endless battles fought on every corner of Earth. But the man was not finished. He raised his head slowly. His eyes were wet, shining with tears he did not wipe away. His voice came low, almost a whisper. You think those wars were the end. You think humanity could not go further. But you are wrong. There was one more war. The last war of Earth. The war that almost destroyed us all. The chamber seemed to grow colder. Shadows stretched across the floor as if the hall itself feared his words. The survivor's hands clenched. His body trembled harder than ever before. I was there, he said. I lived through it. I saw the sky tear open. I saw nations fall in days. I saw the world itself break. The aliens leaned forward, every one of them caught in his voice. It began with fire, the man said. Not from the stars, not from invaders, but from us. Nations unleashed their deadliest weapons. Nuclear fire spread across the skies. Cities vanished in white light. Millions died in moments. The air filled with poison. The seas boiled. The earth itself cracked. Gasps rang through the chamber. Some alien leaders covered their faces, unable to imagine such destruction. Others whispered in disbelief. But the human continued, his voice growing harsher, sharper. The world became a grave. Entire continents turned to ash. The skies were black for years. Crops died. Animals died. Even the oceans turned against us. And yet, humanity did not end. We dug into the earth. We built shelters in the ruins. We ate whatever we could find. We survived while the world above burned. His body shook, but his eyes burned brighter. I remember the silence, he whispered. Cities once filled with life, now nothing but bones and dust. Roads covered in corpses. Skies empty of birds. Only the sound of the wind, carrying the stench of death. Several aliens shivered. Even the reptilian warlords, born for battle, seemed shaken. But the survivor's voice rose again. And even then, we fought. Even when the world was dying, we fought each other. Armies marched across ruins. Soldiers fought in broken cities, under poisoned skies. Men and women carried rifles even when their children were starving. Because surrender was worse than death. Because to be human is to fight until the last breath. The chamber was so silent, the survivors' breaths echoed like thunder. I lost everyone, he said, his voice breaking. My family, my friends, my people, all gone in the fire. I should have died with them. I wanted to die with them. But something kept me alive. A curse, maybe. Or a duty. His hands shook violently now. His knees bent slightly, as if his body could no longer hold the weight of his memories. I crawled through ruins where the air burned my lungs. I walked through fields of bones. I dug food from the dirt like an animal. I was nothing. A shadow. A ghost. But still. I lived. The chamber trembled with silence. And when I finally rose from the ashes, when I stood again, I realized something. Humanity was not dead. Scattered, broken, burned, but not dead. Survivors like me still walked. Survivors who carried the memory of fire. Survivors who would rebuild. That is what we are. That is what we always are. Survivors. He lifted his head fully now. His eyes, though wet with tears, burned with something terrifying, unyielding fire. You look at me and see a broken man. But I am more than that. I am the last voice of Earth's final war. I carry the memory of every scream, every fire, every shadow burned into stone. I carry the truth of humanity, that even when we destroy ourselves, we rise again. One alien, covered in glowing armor, finally spoke. Its voice was low, almost trembling. Why tell us this, human? Why share such pain? The man turned his gaze on the creature. His voice came like iron. Because you must understand. If you ever bring war to humanity again, if you ever awaken what sleeps inside us, you will see what I saw. You will see skies burn. You will see the ground turn to ash. You will see survivors crawling out of fire, ready to fight again. You will see the truth of my people. The chamber fell silent again. The last human survivor stood trembling, his body weak, his face scarred by memory. But in his voice was something stronger than any empire, stronger than any weapon. A warning. And the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, began to feel true fear. The council chamber felt heavier than stone. The alien rulers, who had once mocked the trembling human, now sat frozen in silence. The survivor's voice had cut deeper than any blade, his story painting horrors beyond imagination. But he was not finished. The man stood straighter now, though his body still shook. His eyes, wet with tears, glowed with something terrifying, unyielding truth. You wanted to know about Earth, he said softly. You wanted the truth. Now you have it. And with it, you must hear my warning. The chamber grew stiller. Even the faint hum of machines seemed to fade away. Every alien leaned forward, unable to resist the pull of his words. The man's voice was quiet, but it carried across the hall like thunder. Do not mistake us, he said. Do not mistake humanity for weak creatures that you can rule. You saw our wars. You heard of our fire. You know how close we came to ending ourselves. And yet, we are still here. We survived what should have destroyed us. We survived our own wrath. That is what makes us dangerous. The alien leaders shifted uneasily. Some exchanged glances. Others stared down at the floor, unwilling to meet his gaze. The survivor raised his hand, his finger trembling as he pointed at the council. You look at me and see one man. But within me are the voices of billions. My people may be gone, but their spirit burns inside me. And if even one of us carries that fire, then humanity is never truly finished. His words echoed in the chamber like a drumbeat. Do not test us, he warned. Do not bring your empires, your fleets, your armies to our world. Because if you do, you will awaken something you cannot control. You will awaken the fire that nearly burned Earth itself to ashes. And once that fire is unleashed, nothing in this galaxy will stop it. Gasps filled the chamber. Some alien leaders recoiled in shock. Others looked pale, as if the weight of his warning pressed down on them like a storm. The man's voice grew stronger, no longer shaking with fear, but ringing with power. You call yourselves rulers. You think you control the stars. But you have never faced a species like mine. We do not fear death. We do not surrender. Even when the skies burn, even when the ground is torn apart, even when we are broken and scattered, we fight. We rise. We endure. His eyes swept across the room, burning into each alien leader's soul. Understand this. I am not a soldier. I am not a king. I am only a survivor. If I can stand here before you after all I have seen, imagine what my people were when we stood together. Imagine what humanity could become if forced to fight again. The chamber shook with silence. The survivor lowered his hand. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but his voice still struck like iron. I am giving you a choice, he said. Leave Earth alone. Do not touch what remains of my people. Do not test us. Because if you do, you will not face an army. You will not face a nation. You will face something far worse. You will face the wrath of survivors. And survivors do not stop. Survivors do not forget. Survivors do not forgive. The words hung in the air like fire. One alien, its body shimmering like liquid metal, finally broke the silence. Its voice was low, uneasy. Is this a threat, human? The man turned toward it. His eyes narrowed. His voice was quiet, but every word struck with terrifying weight. No. This is not a threat. This is a warning. The chamber seemed to tremble at his words. Humanity does not need to threaten. Humanity does not need to boast. Our history is enough. Our scars are enough. You wanted to know what we are, now you know. We are fire wrapped in flesh. We are ghosts that refuse to die. We are the storm that rises even when the sky has fallen. That is who we are. That is why you must stay away. The silence that followed was deeper than anything the council had ever known. The alien rulers, who had once laughed at the mention of Earth, now sat in fear. Not fear of fleets. Not fear of weapons. But fear of a species that had already walked through its own apocalypse and still stood. The human closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. When he opened them, his voice softened, but the fire remained. This is my last gift to you, he said. A warning. Remember it well. Because if you forget, the galaxy itself will burn. The chamber froze. No one spoke. No one moved. The last human survivor had given his warning. And the galaxy would never forget it. The chamber remained frozen. The air was heavy, as if the walls themselves feared to breathe. Alien rulers, who once sat tall on their glowing thrones, now leaned back in silence, their pride stripped away. At the center stood the human, fragile, trembling, scarred but unbroken. His warning still echoed in every corner of the hall. No one spoke. No one dared. The man lowered his gaze for a moment, as though he carried the weight of all history on his shoulders. His body was weak, but his voice, when it came, was steady, strong, eternal. You asked me for the truth of Earth, he said quietly. Now you have it. You wanted to understand humanity, now you do. But remember this, I am not only one man. I am the memory of a people who refused to die. His words struck like thunder. I am the fire of children who held stones against tanks. I am the echo of mothers who carried rifles when their sons fell. I am the shadow of fathers who stood in fire until the last breath. I am the survivor of a world that tried to end itself, but could not. I am humanity. The alien leaders shifted, their glowing eyes wide. For the first time in centuries, rulers of entire empires felt small, smaller than a single trembling man. The survivor's voice softened, but it carried more power than before. One day, perhaps, my people will rise again. One day, Earth will no longer be a grave but a home rebuilt from ashes. And when that day comes, the galaxy must remember what was spoken here. You must remember what we endured, what we became. If you forget, then you will repeat the mistake of those who thought us weak. The hall trembled with silence. The man raised his head fully now, and for the first time, the aliens saw it, the fire in his eyes. It was not just pain. Not just grief. It was something greater. Something eternal. Hope. The last survivor of Earth, who had carried the weight of every scream and every war, stood not as a broken man, but as a symbol. You call me the last, he said, his voice ringing through the chamber. But you are wrong. Humanity is never the last. As long as one lives, we all live. As long as one remembers, we are eternal. I am not the end. I am the beginning. The chamber shook. The aliens sat in stunned silence, their bodies tense, their thoughts spiraling. A being born of endless wars, of fire and ash, of death and survival, stood before them. And they understood, perhaps for the first time, why their empires should fear Earth. The survivor's strength began to fade. His body wavered, his knees weak. He leaned on the edge of the speaking platform, his breathing ragged. Yet his eyes never dimmed. His fire never died. "This is my legacy," he whispered. "Not victory. Not conquest. Survival. And survival is more dangerous than power. Survival means you can burn 1,000 times and still rise. That is who we are. That is who we will always be." The words cut into every heart, every mind. And then, slowly, the man lowered his head. His body trembled one last time. He was exhausted, drained, nearly broken. But he had given his truth. He had given his warning. He had given his legacy. The hall was silent. Finally, an alien ruler spoke, its voice thin with awe. "We will remember," it whispered. Another voice followed. "We will not test humanity." Another. "The galaxy must not forget." One by one, the rulers of entire civilizations bowed their heads. Not to power. Not to weapons. Not to fleets. But to the fire of one trembling survivor, the last echo of Earth. The human closed his eyes. For the first time in years, perhaps in his entire life, he allowed himself to breathe not with fear, not with grief, but with peace. Because he knew his people lived on. Not in numbers. Not in armies. But in memory. In fear. In respect. And most of all, in legacy. The galaxy would never forget the last human survivor. The galaxy would never forget Earth. And in the silence of the great chamber, the human stood not as the last, but as the eternal voice of a species that refused to die.